Talking Trees with Lily and Jad. Welcome to Talking Trees, your daily journey into the science behind our green world. In today's episode, we explore the factors shaping plant and tree growth. Our first study examines the effects of Ascophyllum nodosum extract on various tree species, revealing short-term boosts in growth and root development at higher doses, though without lasting changes to improve transplant tolerance. Next, we dive into research on soil structure complexity, where a heterogeneous mix with macropores supports robust root growth in peas and barley, but not in Arabidopsis, highlighting the nuanced interplay between root architecture and soil dynamics. Join us as we unravel these insights and discover what truly nurtures our trees and plants.
Hey everyone, and welcome to a deep dive, specifically for you arborists out there.
That's right.
We're going way past osmosis. It's like just what it is in the textbook.
Yeah.
We're really going to dig into how it impacts the work that you do every day.
Exactly.
From seed germination to root development, and even how seaweed extract can, really get down into how a tree functions.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
So get ready, because what we find out here could really change how you approach taking care of trees. So let's start with something that I think every arborist really cares about, seed germination.
Absolutely.
So we've got this study by Common and their team, and they tested seaweed extract on different tree species.
Right.
And what they found with European beech, or Ficus sylvatica, was really interesting.
Yeah, they found a big increase in germination rates for the beech seeds when they were treated with the seaweed extract. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
Only the European beech seeds showed this big increase.
Oh.
The other species they tested didn't do the same thing.
So what's the deal with beech seeds? Is there something about how they're put together that makes them, really take to that extract?
Well, it's a great question. Beech seeds have these large cotyledons, which are basically the seedlings' energy reserves.
Oh.
And the study suggests that the seaweed extract might be helping those seeds access those reserves faster.
Oh.
They think it could be impacting the activity of an enzyme called alpha amylase, which breaks down those stored nutrients.
Now, I know that certain plant hormones, like gibberellins, can also increase alpha amylase activity.
Exactly.
But here's the weird thing.
Yeah.
The seaweed extract they used, it didn't have any gibberellin. So how is it having this big effect on germination?
That's the puzzle.
Right.
And it just shows you how much we still need to learn about how plants and these extracts interact.
Right.
There's something unique going on with how that seaweed extract is interacting with beech seeds on a cellular level.
Wow.
And researchers are definitely digging into that.
Yeah, it's like the seaweed extract is doing something special in those beech seeds.
Yeah.
Boosting that germination.
Yeah.
But it's not using that typical gibberellin pathway.
Nope.
That's wild.
It's a mystery, for sure.
Let's move on to another part of tree care that's really critical, root development.
And
this is where Kemen's team's study gets really interesting.
Yeah.
They looked at how root architecture is different between different tree species.
Right.
And, as arborists, we're always thinking about roots.
Of course.
But this research really takes our understanding to a whole new level.
Absolutely. And they found that some species, like common hawthorn or Crataegus monogyna, they have what we call high-specific root length, or SRL.
Right.
And this basically means their roots are thinner and longer, so they can explore more soil, even if their root system isn't that massive overall.
Which makes sense when you consider how hawthorn grows.
Right.
It's a real early invader.
Yeah.
Able to establish itself in new areas super quick.
Exactly.
And those long exploratory roots really give it an advantage.
Absolutely. It's all about that competitive edge.
Right.
And it just shows how a tree's root structure is totally tied to its role in the ecosystem.
Yeah, and then on the other hand, you've got species like Ficus sylvatica.
Our European beech friend again.
Yeah, exactly.
It develops denser roots with a lower SRL.
Right.
And this strategy seems to work better in shallower organic soils. The kind of environment beech usually likes.
So different root strategies for different environments.
Exactly.
It's all about adaptation. Okay, so let's bring in another study now.
Okay.
That adds a really cool layer to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Giuliani and their team did some really interesting research on how soil structure impacts root development.
Yeah, they created these artificial soil environments in the lab. to really isolate the effects of what we call soil heterogeneity.
Okay.
So imagine this. They had these cores packed with either uniform, finely sieved soil or with clumps of soil.
All right.
Kind of like what you'd see in a tilled seed bed.
Gotcha. I'm picturing it.
Yeah.
So did they find that growing in that clumpy, heterogeneous soil actually helped root development?
Well,
I'm really curious.
It's not so simple for plants like peas and barley, which have pretty big root systems.
Okay.
They actually saw increased root length in that compacted heterogeneous soil. It seems like those bigger roots were able to use those larger spaces between the soil clumps.
Oh, interesting.
You know, those macropores?
Yeah.
To navigate that denser soil more efficiently.
So it's like a good thing to have some variation in the soil structure.
Exactly.
Especially for those species with the bigger roots.
Yeah, it gives them more room to move.
Okay.
But here's where it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
They also tested a small plant called Arabidopsis, which has these super fine roots. And guess what? They found the opposite.
Oh, wow.
Arabidopsis actually had shorter roots in that compacted heterogeneous soil.
Huh. Why would that be?
Yeah.
Could it be that those tiny roots were just getting lost in those bigger pores?
Yeah, that's a great point, and it highlights something really important for you guys to think about.
What's that?
The interplay between root size and soil pore structure.
Right.
It's not just about having macropores. It's about having the right size macropores for the roots that are trying to grow.
Wow, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So we're seeing that osmosis isn't just about water moving across a membrane.
Right.
It's the engine driving how trees take up nutrients, how their roots develop, and how they adapt to all these different soil environments.
All connected.
Yeah, and that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly.
This seaweed extract we've been talking about, it seems like it's doing way more than just helping those seeds germinate.
Oh, yeah?
It's affecting how water moves and even how gases are exchanged inside the plant. And it brings us back to that idea of osmosis working on all these different levels, from the cells all the way up to the whole plant.
It's fascinating. You know what really strikes me about all this research is how connected everything is.
Yeah.
We've seen how root traits like SRL are totally linked to a tree species ecological strategy and how those strategies are shaped by their soil environment.
It's like this chain reaction where one thing impacts another.
Exactly.
And it all comes back to how well that tree can get to and use water.
Precisely. And then we add in the seaweed extract, which can even affect gene expression and how water moves within the plant.
Right.
It really shows just how complex these interactions are.
Okay, before we really dig into the seaweed extract, I want to go back to that study by Giuliani and their team for a second.
Okay.
I'm still thinking about that finding with the Arabidopsis roots.
Yeah.
Where they actually had trouble in that compacted heterogeneous soil.
Right.
It really makes you question that idea that more macropores always means better root growth.
Absolutely. It shows that context matters.
Yeah.
What works for one species might not work for another.
Right.
And even within the same species, the ideal soil structure can be different, depending on things like root size and how compacted the soil is.
Okay. So as arborists, we need to be paying attention to the specific needs of each tree species.
Right.
And what the soil they're growing in is like.
Exactly. It's about understanding those details.
Yeah.
If you're working with a species known for having an aggressive root system, like our hawthorn example, you probably don't need to worry as much about soil contraction.
Okay.
Those roots will likely find a way.
Yeah.
But for a species with more delicate roots like beech, creating a soil environment with good aeration is super important.
Right.
Especially in compacted soils.
That makes sense. So things like soil amendments, mulching, and aeration techniques become even more important when we're dealing with those sensitive species.
Absolutely. It's all about using our knowledge to create the best possible underground environment for those trees.
I totally agree. Okay, so let's switch gears a bit and talk about this Hysteria seaweed extract.
All right.
It seems like it's doing more than just boosting germination. Common's team found some evidence that it might even be influencing transpiration rates.
Right. Remember those compounds in the seaweed extract we talked about earlier? The ones acting as osmotic agents? Well, it seems like they can actually change the water potential within the plant cells. And that impacts how water moves through the whole tree.
It's like fine-tuning the tree's internal plumbing.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And this fine-tuning can affect other processes, too, like transpiration, nutrient uptake, and even photosynthesis.
Which leads us to another interesting finding from the study.
Yeah.
The seaweed extracts seem to increase what they call stomatal limitations to photosynthesis in Fagus sylvatica.
Right.
So basically, it looked like it made it a bit harder for the beech leaves to take in carbon dioxide.
which they need for photosynthesis.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive.
Right.
You'd think something that helps with germination and water management would also help with photosynthesis.
You would think so.
But as we've been saying, plants are complex.
They are.
And even a single change can trigger a whole bunch of responses.
Yeah.
And some of those might seem contradictory at first.
Yeah, it's not always clear-cut.
So it's not really a good thing or a bad thing.
Right.
It's just a thing.
Exactly, and it shows how much we still don't know about how these extracts interact with different tree species.
Right.
On a physiological level.
Yeah, what might be good for one species might have unexpected effects on another.
Absolutely.
So as arborists, how do we make sense of all this?
Yeah.
We know seaweed extract can affect water movement and how the stomata behave.
Right.
How can we use that knowledge in the field?
Well, one area where this could be really important is transplant shock. Newly transplanted trees are super vulnerable to water stress.
Yeah.
And anything we can do to help them manage their water balance during that critical time can really affect whether they survive.
So could applying seaweed extract when we transplant trees actually help reduce that transplant shock?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's definitely something we need to research more, given how the extract might help with osmotic adjustment. It's possible that it could help trees acclimate to their new environment more effectively.
That's a really interesting thought.
Yeah.
Imagine if we could use seaweed extract to make transplants more successful.
It would be a game changer.
But of course, like you said, we need more research.
We do.
To be sure it works and figure out the best way to apply it.
Absolutely, but these are the kind of questions we need to be asking.
Yeah.
And this research gives us a lot of valuable information to guide those questions.
Right. It all comes back to understanding those basic principles of plant biology.
Exactly.
And that's what helps us develop better and more effective ways to take care of trees.
Couldn't agree more.
We've been looking at how osmosis works in all these different situations, from seed germination to root development to how trees manage water.
Yeah.
But how does all this connect to the challenges that arborists are dealing with in the real world?
Yeah.
Especially with climate change being such a big issue.
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
As the climate changes, trees in cities are facing more and more stress.
Right.
From hotter temperatures, more droughts, and extreme weather.
Yeah.
All these things can mess with a tree's osmotic balance and make it harder for them to do well.
So as arborists, we can't just plant trees anymore.
Right.
We need to be planting trees that can handle these tougher conditions.
Absolutely. Trees that can survive drought and heat stress and all the other pressures that come with a changing climate.
Exactly. We got to choose the right trees for the right spots, prep the soil properly, and give them the care they need to stay resilient.
It all starts with understanding what trees need and how they interact with their environment, especially when it comes to water.
And that's where a good understanding of osmosis is so important.
Absolutely.
It gives us the knowledge to make smart choices about everything.
Right.
From what species to plant, to how to plant them, to how to water them.
We can use that knowledge to help trees thrive.
Yeah, even when things get tough. Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought-provoking idea.
Okay.
We've seen how crucial osmosis is for trees to survive.
It's essential.
Now imagine if we could use that understanding to create brand new ways to take care of trees.
That's a great point.
What if we could figure out how to manipulate those osmotic processes, even in small ways?
Right.
Could we make trees more drought tolerant?
It's possible.
Could we help them fight off diseases better?
Yeah.
Could we find new ways to help them bounce back from stress?
There are so many possibilities.
So to all the arborists listening,
keep learning.
Keep asking questions, keep pushing the limits of what you know.
Yeah.
The future of our urban trees depends on it.
I agree. Well said. I think that's a perfect way to wrap things up.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive into the world of osmosis and tree care.
It's been a pleasure.
To all our listeners out there, keep those dendrites firing.
Yeah.
There's always more to learn in the amazing world of trees. Until next time, happy arboretum.
Thank you for joining us on today's exploration into the science of tree and plant growth. We've uncovered the short-term benefits of Ascophyllum nodosum extract on trees, delved into how complex soil structures can shape root development, and revisited the fundamentals of tree biology. We hope these insights inspire you to look at nature's details with fresh eyes. Until next time, keep nurturing the green around you. Keep